Jungian analysis assumes that the individual achieves well-being through the exploration of what Carl Jung called the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. Containing repressed material from childhood, the personal unconscious is symbolized by Jung's archetype of the shadow self, which represents all parts of the psyche unacceptable to self and others. Jung believed that the most important task of early adulthood is to bring the contents of the shadow self to awareness and integrate it into the conscious personality. The shadow manifests as the opposite of Jung's concept of the persona, or our public mask. In contrast, the collective unconscious is a universal and transpersonal component of the psyche that contains all human experience and potential. Once the shadow has been embraced, the client can continue in the process of what Jung called individuation, a gradual incorporation of universal archetypal patterns into everyday experience. These archetypes provide blueprints for creative development and manifest in our dreams, art, religious symbols, and myths. Two of the most significant archetypes are the anima, which represents the feminine within all males, and the animus, which represents the masculine within all females. Jung believed that the unconscious could be accessed through the imagination as manifested in dreams, free association, images, and symbols, as well as what Jung called active imagination. Exploring these symbols and images are a means of understanding the past, relieving psychological symptoms, and finding guidance in creating a full and more meaningful life. In this role play, watch how Dr. Paula Justice works with Karen as they explore dream images to help the client acknowledge and embrace her shadow self and how it might be integrated into her public self and waking life.
Well, welcome back. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. And the last time we were together, you said you had an interesting dream that you thought was important to what we were talking about. Can you sort of describe that at this point?
Yes, well, I was in a shower room and I remember being surrounded by extremely obese women, like 300, 400, 500 pounds. And I remember walking through it and we all were naked. We'd had no clothes on, but I remember being like so proud that I was the only thinner one there, but all these women, I just was disgusted by them. I couldn't believe that they were in this shower room with me.
And so how did you feel when you woke up from this dream?
Well, I did feel pretty disgusted at how someone could let themselves get like that. I just am turned off by it, that lack of self-control, and I felt proud also in my dream because I was so different than the rest of them, and I had a certain amount of self-control, and I was doing good. So proud and disgusted.
Okay. And do you have any sense of, we had talked about days residue, how this might relate to your waking life?
Yes.
Right now?
Well, I'm doing those pageants. I'm doing Miss Virginia Beach and Miss Portsmouth Seawall, and especially for Miss Portsmouth Seawall right now, I'm really dieting, and I've lost about 5 pounds in the past 2 weeks, and that's a lot for me. I don't usually, I don't fluctuate like that. And so I'm not allowing myself to eat everything I would like to, so I think that that is definitely being perceived in my dream as my daily residue as people that can eat, and I almost like them, but I'm still proud of myself, so it's that tearing, emotional.
Okay, so being very conscious about your own eating
Yes.
and your own weight, particularly because of the pageants,
Yes.
may have prompted this.
Oh yes, because we have to be
dream.
in a swimsuit in front of everyone.
Right.
So,
Right. And we had talked about that dreams sometimes present a balance or a compensation for what's going on in our waking life. And so here we have these women overeating, whereas you're having to be so conscious of not eating. And I'd encourage you to perhaps do some journaling with the dream. Were you able to do any of that?
Yeah, I actually have it. I brought it with me. I did a dream dialogue instead of the
Oh,
journal,
good.
where I actually talked to one of the women, and we had a conversation, and she said, "Why are you so disgusted by me?" And I told her, "Your lack of self-control and what you're doing to your body, it just disgusts me." And I said, "I never want to be like you." So we had a pretty rough conversation.
How did you feel toward her differently in going through the conversation?
Sort of towards the end, she kind of encouraged me to, it's okay to overeat every once in a while. You can be indulgent, once a week or whenever. And I sort of encouraged her to, maybe we can go work out. So we both tried to help each other at the end. So that was good. So it was a very rough beginning, but we kind of came to amends at the end to a degree.
So you felt a little closer to her. I remember in one of our earlier sessions talking about that there are some weight issues in your family, and you had some weight concerns as a younger person.
When I was younger, I know I was extremely overweight, and I remember in 5th grade, my parents having to sit me down and say, "You need to lose 20 pounds, or this is might develop type 2 diabetes, this and that." Didn't know what it was at the time. I also have 2 uncles that are extremely obese. One of them is applying for gastric bypass surgery right now, and the other one is a workaholic and just doesn't care, but his wife is so concerned. So I think I'm especially disgusted by these women because it runs in my family, and I'm afraid that it could be a little too easy for me to get like that because of the genetic traits that I carry.
And I remember you saying that it wasn't until you had that conversation with your parents you became
self-conscious. That didn't really, even we used to do weigh-ins in PE in front of everyone, and I remember that was a little weird because I weighed more than all the other kids. But I really didn't care until my parents told me that there was something wrong with it. And then I remember it was like a snap. I said, "Oh, this isn't right." And so from then, I remember 6th grade, I went on my first diet, and I lost about 50 pounds in 1 year. And from then on, it's just been an obsession of mine. My sister has it as well. We're both eating obsessed.
So in this dream, perhaps you're seeing kind of a shadow part. We talked about the shadow part of the self, that the part that just lets herself go. And
yeah, it's the part that I'm scared of, too, the shadow part that I don't want to be seen. I don't want to show people that I have a lack of self-control. I know when people show lack of self-control around me, I just get very angry. And you said that's a part of your shadow self, things that you get very angry about. I get very angry at very overweight people because I know it's unhealthy and I know that they could die. My grandpa died of a heart attack, which was related to smoking as well, but also his extra fat and stuff like that. His heart wasn't strong enough. So it's a serious fear of mine.
Yeah, so you have these family health issues, you have your parents' concern, you have the beauty pageants.
And also the career. Because I want to go into television somehow, whether, hopefully on camera. My dream is to be on camera and TV somehow as my career. And to do that, I have to be very thin because TV adds weight to you. And I'm to the point right now, I feel like I've got all my studies in line, I've got all this in line, I've got everything else except for the weight under control. That's my mindset. So if I gain weight, then it's like I'm self-sabotaging my career. So it's extra pressure for me.
So one of the things that we work on with the shadow is finding a way to kind of embrace the shadow, and so it isn't so frightening, so threatening, and you have a lot of reasons to be fearful of these overweight women in the dream, but is there anything about them that may be positive? Or
Yeah, I know, especially, like, we just saw this movie, my sister and I, it had Queen Latifah in it. I think it was called, I actually don't remember, like, she learned that she was going to die in a few months, and so she lived her life. And this woman in this movie, she's a thicker woman, and she was portrayed as so beautiful and just so wonderful, and she had so much to give. And actually Hollywood is sort of steering a little bit away from the anorexic models. They just in Fashion Week fired several models where you could see their bones. So society's becoming a little more encouraging, and I can really see, especially in heavier women, you're able to see their inner beauty more. I think. Like in the movie we talked about this too, Gwyneth Paltrow. I don't know if you've seen that movie. I don't remember the name of that as well, but she was able to date this boy because he was hypnotized to only see her inner beauty.
So Shallow Hal.
Shallow Hal, yes. And so that was cool to see how much inner beauty they have inside of them, everyone.
Yeah. And I remember you saying once that sometimes you associate very thin women with coldness
Very
and
stoic, yeah.
And distance.
And heavier women, I think of them as more loving and caring. For some reason, I have that in my head. I think it's because of some literature courses I've taken. We described motherly women and loving women as heavier and skinnier women as meaner and I don't know.
So, even though the overweight women are threatening in terms of your career and possibly health issues, there's something about them that's softer, more loving, more motherly. And how might you want that in your life in the future?
Well, I do know that I need to calm down on the eating obsession. So it is a part of me that I want. I would love to not care about what I eat, you know, so that's a positive thing in the dream. These women that really don't care what they eat, I'd love to be like that. So that's an emotional mindset that I'm going to try to get to. And also, they're just so loving, and I want that as well. I want to be able to be like that instead of so rigid about everything that I have to do. So there's lots of positive things.
And I know you said that you felt like your boyfriend accepts you just the way you are.
My boyfriend, Matt, he always, I know that I've gained, I might have gained 10 pounds, like during Christmas time, especially last year, I think I gained about 10 pounds and then had another pageant, so I lost 20. But he has always been there. He always, every day, you're so beautiful, you're so wonderful, you're amazing. So that's so encouraging to me, because I used to think, if I don't lose weight, then I'll never get a boyfriend. And now that I'm getting older, I'll never get a husband. I'll never keep a husband if I can't stay thin. So his unconditional love has been so encouraging to me for my body image, to just know that I can be loved no matter what I look like.
So he doesn't have any problem embracing that part
Not
of you.
at all. No, he likes it. He does like this to my arm at church. I love this. I love this jiggle. So he likes it.
Yeah. And you're comfortable with him, whatever size.
I'm very comfortable. Yeah, he actually hurt his back, and so he gained a little bit of weight, and he was very self-conscious about that. But I think he's beautiful all the time, so it's cool for me to see that as well. Me not caring about if he gains 5 pounds, and him not caring about if I gain 10. He loves me for more than just what I look like.
So in becoming aware of the dream and dialoguing with the characters and looking at a little bit, you're kind of moving a little closer maybe to accepting some of the things that these women represent in yourself and in your future.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Not completely, but yes, just a little bit.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. So I'm doing good.
Thank you very much for bringing that in.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Boy, Paula, that was really interesting, and I'm really fascinated by how you worked with this client around her weight issues. You know, I know Jung talked about the difference between a personal unconscious and the collective unconscious, and I guess I gather you were working with the personal unconscious here, and I was wondering if you can talk about the difference and why you might work with the personal unconscious versus the collective unconscious with a client.
Jung's concept of the collective unconscious was sort of a universal part of human consciousness which led us into the future. He called that process individuation. Okay. And that became particularly important in the second half of our life. In order to find meaning, we would begin to work with what he called the archetypal patterns. Okay. Karen, of course, is a much younger client.
Right.
She would be more focused on the process of embracing those parts of the self that we repress or we want to deny because they're not acceptable to society. And that goes into what Jung called the personal unconscious, which was kind of epitomized or represented by the shadow archetype. And so that's sort of what we were working on in the dream.
Okay. And so that shadow part of herself was the part that she kind of feared about herself, about becoming overweight. And
right. Our shadow, from Jung's perspective, is any part of ourselves that we're not comfortable with, that we think others wouldn't approve of, that we're ashamed of, embarrassed by. Yeah.
And you're trying to help her integrate that shadow part of herself into kind of her waking self.
Right, because we can't really deny or cut off some aspect of ourselves. Ultimately, we have to integrate all aspects for wholeness, for individuation, for health.
Right.
Yeah.
I noticed that the two of you were using this term daily residue. Is that a Jungian term, and how does that relate to what you were doing?
Well, Jung saw the dream as having two functions. The first is the dream was compensatory, meaning it balanced out an extreme perspective that was being lived out in waking life and the daily activities. So in Karen's waking life, she's very focused on her appearance and her weight, being in beauty pageants, being on camera in terms of her career. And so the dream compensates by showing a side of her that might want to be more self-indulgent, might want to be accepted as she is without having to appear in some attractive manner. And so we look at what's going on in the waking life, the daily residue, to see how the dream relates to that.
So in a sense, you might say we're kind of looking for some type of balance in our lives.
Yes, yes. The dream is an attempt to balance realistically how we think about ourselves.
Okay. Let me ask you one more question, which I was thinking about as you were working with Karen. There's a lot of emphasis these days on anorexia, especially with women. And is there a place in therapy for the therapist to be more directive and say, you really need to eat and not be so thin, and versus being more insight-oriented as you were with her?
Well, Karen doesn't have an eating disorder, and she isn't coming to me as a therapist to help her with an eating disorder. So that wouldn't be my role in this particular situation. Certainly, there are clients who go to therapists specifically for aid in working with their eating disorders, and it would be more appropriate for that kind of advice or guidance in that situation.
Well, I want to thank you. It was a fascinating session.
Well, thank you.